So in the past week, my husband and I recently celebrated our 5th year anniversary. 5 years of being married. Crazy. Like, where did the time go? Right. And it's the year 2025. And 5 years ago, we all know what happened. And it does not feel like it has already been 5 years, which is crazy. But anyway, in honor of our 5th year anniversary, and also, I guess this month is considered Love Month, right? I wanted to do something a little bit different. It just came to me. I was just sitting in the car and I was like, you know what? Since it's been 5 years of being married, I want to share 5 lessons that I have learned in these past 5 years. So in this video, I want to share those lessons. I actually did create a post. I posted it already on my socials. So if you follow me on other platforms like Instagram, Facebook, here, YouTube, TikTok, whichever, you may have seen me share that post. And so I was like, you know what? That would be the perfect sit down video or podcast episode, or a YouTube video, right? To actually flush it out a little bit more and just share my thoughts, share what's on my heart as it relates to the things that I have learned in marriage. And maybe this can be somewhat an inspiration for you, whether or not you are married, because Lord knows before I got married, I definitely was reading a lot of marriage stuff and watching a lot of marriage content and being in groups because I want to learn before actually tying the knot, right? You know what mistakes not to make and whichever, even though it's one of those things where you can read all you want. You can read all the books in the world. You can join all the groups or whatever, but there's nothing like true life experience like living in it, right? Because you never know sometimes the full extent of who you're going to marry, right? Just the different life challenges that you have along the way. So not to say that marriage is simply challenges. No, I absolutely love being married. I love my singleness, but I also love, love, love being married. It's just something about partnership that aligns, with your goals and everything. So let's get into that because y'all know I'm a chatter. And that's why I have a YouTube platform, okay? Because I use this platform as like an outlet. When I just started, it was really an outlet. So yeah, today I want to share with you 5 lessons that I have learned in marriage. And before we get into those 5 lessons, by the way, I want to share a little bit of a backstory. My husband and I won't get too much into the backstory, but if you've been following me for a while now, you may know this. But yes, my husband did propose to me. And I think it makes sense to include this to give you guys a little bit of context around us, because sometimes people may be married for a while, but that they've been married for 2 years or 3 years, but they've known each other for maybe 5, or they've known each other for maybe 3 or whichever. In my husband and I's case, he proposed on the 4th date. Okay. Call him crazy. Don't call me crazy, but I guess call me crazy for saying yes. Okay. But it's a whole other thing. It's been 5 years now, so I guess we're not judged so much. But he proposed on the 4th date, and yeah, this was without him and I being intimate. Let's just say that, okay? Because I know some people are like, "Oh my gosh, he bought the cow before testing the milk," like whatever, however people say it, right? But yeah, he proposed on the 4th date, and we're literally just talking, just getting to know each other, and it felt right. He knew. God downloaded something in his spirit. I guess he's the better person to tell it. I kind of wish he was on this episode, but maybe a next time. If you guys want, let me know in the comments below. Let me know in the comments below if you'd love for us to do a part 2, just kind of like a sit down chit chat video of him sharing his perspective, because I can only share so much on that. But it felt like the right thing for him to do. I felt like it was the right thing to say yes. I felt like it was the right time. I was in a great season of my life in my singleness. I was very close to God. I was just pursuing that purpose, God, whichever. And I think that's usually when things, happen, when you're not so like focused on it too much. Yeah. And I just had got out of not basic training in the military, in the Air Force, but technical school. And I think I did a video some time ago. Feel free to check that video out on the backstory. But yeah, it was just like, okay, he asked me out for coffee after talking on the phone for a couple of days or for brunch. And I was like, cool. Cause anyway, I haven't been out in so long. So I was just like, whatever. I didn't take it seriously. I didn't think too much of it, I should say. So I didn't have high expectations like, oh, this maybe it was just like, okay, let's go out. And fast forward, yes, he proposed on the fourth date. I won't get too much into that in this video because that is not what this video is about, but I just wanted to throw that out there for context for when I start talking about the lessons that I have learned. Okay? So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Now, I have my notes here. Of course, like I said, I shared this on my socials. So one of the first things that I said was, your spouse is like your mirror. Your spouse is like your mirror. Marriage has a way of showing you things about yourself, the good, the bad, the in-between, the things that you're working on. It truly does have a way of doing that. And I've heard other people even say this earlier in our marriage. And it is, in fact, so true. And before I actually heard people saying this, that's something that I've actually noticed and I have said to my husband. Your spouse you'll find that they'll reflect. A lot of times they'll reflect based on what you need to work on or what's going on with you as well. Or if you're dealing with stuff, your spouse's reaction will tell, it will show. So that's how that mirroring comes into play. And yes, there are situations where people may be in not so good situations, like abusive situations. So I'm not saying that everything, like your spouse attitude is all a reflection of you, like you, what you need to work on. Because I do understand, I'm not naive to that there are certain situations where, people may be married to like narcissists or just people who are abusive, right? And so I'm not talking about those situations. I'm talking about healthy situations, healthy marriages where, occasionally somebody may get frustrated. Occasionally somebody may be a little bit stressed or dealing with things, stuff like that. Or there may be disagreements because let's face it, right? If you're not having like disagreements or healthy disagreements, right? You can't necessarily agree on everything. Like you're literally not the same people. Okay. So you'll have like disagreements and stuff like that. Oh my goodness, I lost my train of thought. But basically, your spouse is a mirror. So a lot of times you will know when you need to start working on some things or do some introspection or do some inner work, do some self-work based on like your spouse's response to you. So that's one of the first things that I would say that I have learned in my 5 years in marriage. Now, the next thing that I have learned, I wrote down, is communication. That communication is truly key and it is everything, you guys. Before getting married, I would ask other couples who are still happy, relatively happy and are doing well and have been married for a while. What is a secret? What's one thing you would say that has worked for you? I'm just that person, right? I'm going to ask questions. And a lot of people would say communication. And at one point I was just like, oh my gosh, everybody keeps saying the same thing. But honestly, now I know, like 5 years in, I truly understand why communication is so key. You have to understand that we aren't mind readers, and it doesn't matter how long you've known a person. Yes, your spouse may know you well enough to know, okay, she probably doesn't like this, or if I'm ordering food, she definitely doesn't want me to order this because she's allergic to this, or she doesn't like this, whatever. Little things like that. But I'm talking about like the everyday situation. Sometimes, especially us as women, we just think that our man should just read our minds, right? They should just know what we're thinking. They should just know what we want. And the truth is, they don't. They really don't. Like, one thing that I've learned is that you have to train a man how to treat you. It may sound like, what? No, you have to train a man how to treat you. Okay? Because if you think about it, let's say you're dating in the dating phase, is this related to the point too, you guys? I have a script, but I'm still off topic. Okay, communication. Okay. If you are, let's say, dating someone or getting to know someone or whichever, and You just let him handle you however, and you don't say anything about it. Okay. Communication. You don't say anything about it. You don't correct the situation. Maybe he was raised a certain way. Right? He grew up around a certain thing and he thinks it's normal, right, to do that. And you don't address it. You're just like, what's going to end up happening is he's going to continue to do the same old thing because you have not addressed it. You have not communicated that that's not okay, or that's not really how I do things, So communication is so key. Your spouse is not your mind reader. Neither are you. So being clear on your expectations is so, so key. Being clear on your expectations, right? And it can be hard to communicate, especially in times when you're like frustrated, stuff like that. Cool off. Let things cool off. Especially when it comes to men, like men can only focus on so much at once. That's another thing I've learned, but that's not really on my notes. Okay. They're not like women. Like we can multitask. Like women, like we can do the most. When children come in the picture, we can be doing this with the kids, all of these things, and they can only focus on like really one thing. So I say that to say, if you have something really important to talk to your spouse about, let him know. Because don't try to do it in a time when he's maybe trying to focus on work. He's getting prepared for something. He's, I don't know, maybe watching something. I don't know. Say, hey, honey, I need to, or baby, whichever, whatever you call your spouse. I need to have a conversation about this particular thing that has been bothering me. Is it okay that we spend an hour or something like that tomorrow during this time or whichever, or later tonight, and so we can talk about it? Cool. Then you have his undivided attention and he'll be focused. So that's one thing that I've learned too. But communicate, be intentional with that, and talk about your feelings. Talk about your feelings. How does your spouse make you feel when they do a thing? That can help so much and can change the game. Okay. So communication is literally everything. The next point that I have is number 3. Your spouse is not really your enemy. Your spouse is not really your enemy. The real enemy wants you to believe that your spouse is your enemy. Again, I'm talking about like healthy situations. I'm not talking about like extreme situations where a spouse may be abusive, right? I'm not talking about those situations. I'm talking about just, every now and then you guys may have a disagreement about something or maybe frustrated or something like that. It may creep in your mind that I'm against you, you're against me. Instead of thinking that way, switch your perspective from you against me to us versus the problem, or us versus the enemy, and tackle it that way. And you can also look at this from a Christian perspective. I'm a Christian, so I believe in biblical principles, a lot of biblical principles, and I do believe that this can be applied in this aspect, right? It's you as the entity, the marriage entity, in both of you, I should say, against the enemy. I do believe that once you start looking at it like that, I believe that you can overcome so much more. Because remember that you're on the same team, right? In marriage, you guys are on the same team, or you're supposed to be on the same team, right? So every disagreement doesn't mean that your spouse is against you, okay? And I know sometimes us as women, we are very emotional beings and, can be super sensitive, and we can start thinking 1,001 things in our head. But again, of course, if it's not extreme situations, right? I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. Just focus on what the problem is at hand and address the problem. Okay. Another thing is, when you're on the same page, life flows so much smoother. And I kind of said that earlier, right? When you are on the same page, life flows so much smoother. And of course, I am not saying that you should agree on everything, because if you agree on everything, that means that you have no individuality, right? unique beings. Everybody's different. It doesn't matter how long you've been married. Everyone has their own opinions and perspectives on certain topics, right? However, I'm talking about big picture stuff, values, morals, future goals, the direction of your life together, family, those big picture stuff. It's so much better when you are both aligned, when it aligns, and you can become such a powerhouse, y'all. You'll be such a powerhouse when your goals are your big picture goals, right, are aligned with each other. So being on the same team is everything. It is literally everything. Another thing that I've learned is that active listening is everything. Active listening, not just listening to respond or just listening for listening's sake, but actually listening to understand what your spouse is saying and where they are coming from. And with active listening does take intentionality. So you have to intentionally be listening. So for example, if your spouse has something very important to say, you don't want to be scrolling on TikTok, scrolling on your phone, checking your emails. You're not actively listening. The same thing for you, like, right? If you are having a conversation with your spouse, you wouldn't want your spouse to be on, their phone, right? I know for me, I'm like, if I'm talking to you, I need your undivided attention. And my husband knows this and he needs to work on that too. But anyway, I'm not throwing him out there. Active listening is everything. And what else did I have here? Yeah, that is easy to listen to respond, like I said before, but true connection comes from actively listening and having that undivided attention, giving that undivided attention and receiving that undivided attention. True connection comes from that. I'm telling you, like, when I started practicing this, I realized that I've actually really started to hear my spouse more, hear my husband more. My husband is a great listener. Naturally, he's that way. Also, he is a licensed therapist, mental health therapist. So he listens. That's literally his job, to listen. But sometimes, of course, it can be hard to listen to his own wife, right? It depends on like how I address a situation or how I come across or whichever. But overall, he does a great job with listening. But yeah, I find that when we intentionally make the effort to actively listen, the connection is just so much better. Oh, and another thing that I want to say is not only does it deepen the connection, but it deepens the love, the trust, and the respect as well in your marriage. That is why active listening is so important. Now, those are the 5 main things, right? Those are the 5 main things that I've learned in marriage. But when it comes to active listening, I talked about being intentional, that it takes intentionality. Now, I know I said I'm only sharing 5 things, but since we're on a topic of intentionality, another thing that I want to throw out there is that intentionality is key in marriage. Spending intentional time, I should say, quality time, and being intentional about it. Whether it's setting those have a routine date night, right? Maybe it's Sunday nights, Saturday nights, during the day, whatever your lifestyle is like. Everybody's lifestyle and situation is different. You may have children, you may not. Having intentional time that you're spending with each other is so, so important, especially when children come into the picture, right? It takes a lot more intentionality with spending quality time. You have business in the picture, possibly working, business work, just life, doing life, children. You want to take the time to make time for each other. So intentionality is so big in marriage. So those are the 5 key things that I have learned in marriage. And I'm just going to run over them really quickly. Your spouse is like your mirror. Number 2, communication is truly everything. Number 3, your spouse is not really your enemy. Number 4, when you're on the same page, life flows so much smoother. And number 5, active listening is everything. And, intentionality, right? Being intentional. So those are the 5 things that I have learned in marriage. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this list. If you are currently married, what are some of the things that you have learned in your marriage? Feel free to drop those comments below. And if you plan on getting married, what are some of like the concerns that you have, or just, any questions that you have about marriage? Drop them below. If you have anything, positive to share, whether that's your personal story, journey, whatever, any questions about this episode, let me know what you thought of this episode. Leave them in the comments below. And don't forget to like this episode and subscribe. Okay, you may not know that you are not subscribed. So if you made it this far, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell as well. That way, whenever I post another video, you'll be the first to know. Oh, by the way, I don't know, check out in my description below if I have any resources. I used to write blogs actually, but I no longer really do that about like marriage and love and stuff like that. But I don't know, I may have some resources about marriage, relationships, stuff like that below. Feel free to check that out. And I may also include the video that I did a while back, a couple of years ago, on the story on how my husband and I, started talking to each other, or story with getting married and all of that. I may have that video somewhere below or somewhere above here. All right, beautiful people, it's your girl Shibivia. It was an absolute pleasure, and I'll see you guys later. Be blessed. Bye.